This video is going to pertain very much to the subject of religion, but understand me when I say that this isn't just about religion. This is something that transcends the idea of worshipping deities in a religious context. It happens to pertain to secular ideologies at the same time, and has shown some prominence there, just not as much prominence as it has in the context of religion. What I'm talking about here is known as death worship. Death worship, for those of you who don't know, is the idea that one death of a particularly brutal nature should be the central point of a religion or an ideology. It's supposed to be what drives people to act in the name of said ideology, and it's what drives people to go out there and convert, and not just in a religious context. And they're always going to sell you this really stupid nature, whether it is of religious or secular nature. It's going to be this really retarded idea that this death happened for you. Not only did someone die in a particularly brutal way that's bound to horrify you, in just a little bit of a way, it happens to be your fault at the same time. And that's the reason that you need to get on your knees, and you need to pledge allegiance not only to this martyr, but also to the ideology, and also to the practitioners of said ideology. Now, I have a problem with this. I'm not going to say that everyone who happens to follow the same religion or the same ideology is a fucking retard, but in the event that they come to the same conclusions with the same process as these people, then they're fucking retards. And here's the reason why. The belief itself is not genuine. It relies on the emotion of guilt. We're talking about death, for fuck's sake. We're talking about something that's bound to invoke the emotions of fear. And based on our cultural backgrounds or potential relationship with this martyr, it could also invoke the emotions of anger. It could invoke the emotions of sadness. And that's going to be the point where we're really not thinking in the same way as we are when we're calm. When something like that happens, we happen to enter an emotional state. And anyone who's been in an emotional state at any point in time is going to tell you that it really does fuck them up. Any idea, any detail that happens to contradict that emotion, that happens to suggest that that emotion just might not be right in this context, is fucking shit. They're not going to pay attention to detail anymore, and that's the point where they're not really thinking. It's basically being a much more stupid person when you can't calm down and think about whether your thought process is really correct in this context. And that's exactly what these kinds of ideologies and religions rely on. They require you to be emotional. They require you to focus on something as emotionally compelling as death, and not desensitize yourself in the slightest, because somehow it happens to be your fault. You're basically worshipping someone's death as opposed to their ideology. It's completely permissible to just look on this one event and overlook everything else. And that's fucking bullshit. Speaking of the emotional aspect of this topic, death worship very often leads into the formation of angry mobs who have one common motive: to exact revenge on the group that was supposedly responsible for murdering the person who meant oh so much to them. And since death is in the forefront of this ideology, since nothing else really matters, it justifies their ability to contradict their own moral code. Their idea is to basically gain revenge. They need to justify the ability to gain revenge for murder. They need to justify an eye for an eye. And that's the point where they start to dehumanize the other group. They start to say, look at those disgusting fucking swine. Just look at how they murdered the person who meant so much to us. The prophet. Do you really think ethics apply to them? I know it says it in our ideology, but do we really need to apply that to them? This applies to people, not them. They're swine, they die, they get raped, we cleanse them, and that's it. And it doesn't fucking matter if it's unethical, it's the right thing to do, because an eye for a fucking eye. That's basically what the revenge motive can be used to justify. Now, looking over the fact that it's a correlation fallacy, looking at the fact that anyone can tell that you're basically blaming the children for something their parents did, and how that makes no sense whatsoever, let's actually look at the other thing about revenge. It's not a permanent solution, and anyone can use that same justification against you. They fucked you over, so you fuck them over. They get fucked over, so they fuck you over. You get fucked over, so you fuck them over. And it goes on forever. Revenge is incapable of being a permanent solution, and at some point, you're going to have to move on. As I stated previously in this video, death is bound to drive strong emotional reactions, no matter how philosophically sound, or no matter how accurate an idea might be. And ultimately, if someone is to be murdered in a brutal way because of the ideology that they started, it's ultimately going to lead into very strong emotional reactions, and by very virtue of those strong emotional reactions being there, the other more important aspects of the ideology may very well be completely forgotten, and all of that might be used in an attempt to contradict some moral codes which are laid out there. And someone who has an ideology and who might be put to death for it might realize very early on that in the event that they're to be persecuted for this, in the event that they're to be murdered for this, that event is going to permanently be there in the history of the ideology, and ultimately the original ideas themselves may not survive. And that's the reason that if you really care about the idea itself, and if you really care about this person, you're going to do everything in your power to make sure that their work is actually honored posthumously. They know that something might be overshadowed, that everything might be overshadowed in the event that they're murdered, because that's how human nature is. But you need to fight that aspect of human nature. You need to make it so they actually get what they want out of it, if they genuinely aren't just looking to get their idea out there and nothing else. If they genuinely do care about their fellow man enough to share their ideas so freely. That's on you. It's on you to actually show them that level of respect.